This is going to be Just Human, episode 341. And I'm here with a fresh pot of coffee. And I got some sleepy dogs over here beside me. And I have a whole bunch of documents. Old documents and some new documents, which really are old, but they're newly declassified. And I want to continue talking about Comey and the Comey indictment. I have some not quite dissonance going on with it, but I have some there are some things I just can't square. That's a good way to put it. Some things I can't just I simply have a difficult time squaring. And so I want to take a look at these things and go over some documents with you. There's some old documents, the old OIG reports on these matters we're going to take a look at, but we're also going to look at the recently declassified investigations into the leaks that Durham was part of. And there's a section of those declassified docs, which we looked at before. We looked at all the ones that Durham had to do with, right? I did an episode. We went over all the Durham ones. But there's a section where several pages are still redacted. It's the heaviest section of redacted. It's like a dozen pages that are pretty much all redacted. And within there's a couple, I think there's a couple clues we can look at. And I think they're still redacted because they have to do with this. They have to do with this case that's been brought against Comey. And the difficulty that I'm having with Comey in this indictment isn't just that I think that he's actually a good guy in the grand scheme of things. If we're going to put good guys and bad guys, we're going to sign black hats, white hats kind of thing, which I don't often do because it gets you in trouble. And people are more gray. People are more complex than just being all the time good, all the time bad. But it's not just that I think that Comey is wrongfully labeled this bad guy and people only see him through that lens. That's how he's been cast. So I know I'm the kayfabe guy, and I talk a lot about kayfabe, or at least I used to talk about it a lot. And the reason I did is because Trump uses kayfabe. And there's no doubt about it in my mind that Trump uses kayfabe. And I think that if you think he doesn't, then you have a hard time squaring everything he says. Because Trump is a contradiction in and of himself on so many things. But Trump uses kayfabe against the swamp, and the swamp uses kayfabe against us. And if you don't know what I mean by that, then let me quickly just say here at the beginning of the show, what I mean by that is that the swamp or the uniparty pretends to be at odds with one another in order to dupe their voters and the media into thinking that they're at odds with one another, when really they're both fleecing the American public. So the easy example of it, and the most obvious example, is how Congress will pretend that they're in some sort of fight with each other on the right and the left. Democrats and Republicans are arguing about some bill, and both sides will tell their voters that they're trying to do the best deal for their constituents, and they're trying to restore whatever or make whatever better or bring whatever jobs back to the U.S. And they make all sorts of promises, and they talk about all the noble things they're trying to do for their voters. And then they act like there's no agreement. We don't agree that so-and-so across the aisle is the worst representative ever from that state. And over there's the senator who, I remember the guy who came before him. He was a great person. He cared, but this guy doesn't, and they make all these accusations against each other. And they act like they're at each other's throats, like Hannity and Combs used to be, or like CNN's Crossfire. But then in reality, they get along great, and they go to the same clubs. They go to the same restaurants together. They go to the same resorts and beach getaways. They share each other's attorneys and stockbrokers, and they exchange tips on what to invest in. And in the back rooms, their staffers are writing the bill that they're eventually going to vote on, and they already know they're going to vote on it. They already know they're going to vote yes on it. They're just engaging in kayfabe. They're engaging in theater for the purpose of their constituents believing that so-and-so is representing me in Congress in D.C. But really, they're just representing the lobby class. They're representing their own interests. They're just putting on a performance for the cameras. And that sort of kayfabe, that sort of theater is one that we're all familiar with, and we've all seen play out for decades and decades and decades in Washington. All of my life that has gone on, and likely all of your life that has gone on. And you got real tired of it, didn't you? You got real tired of voting for people who, when they campaigned, represented themselves to be something much stronger and much more principled than they actually turned out to be once they moved to Washington, right? And when Trump came along, he blew all that up, didn't he? He blew all that up because he exposed all that. He exposed so much of it anyway. And he forced people to actually stand by their principles. And he wasn't afraid to call people out when they didn't. But he was also willing to stoke the fires at times when it needed to be stoked and engage in kayfabe that blew us all away, such as being willing to challenge people on his own side and call them out, but then turn around and be good friends with them and give them an appointment in his administration. In a way, loyalty testing all of them. And we've seen how Trump will go from praising someone one day and then a week later decide, nope, they're a problem, and completely turn on them. And you're like, what the heck is going on? And I don't see how you can't call that kayfabe. It's Trump engaging in various theatrics like that. The other thing is that Trump engages in kayfabe, particularly with the FBI. And that's what has always stood out to me, is that Trump would attack DOJ and attack FBI and call them crooked and all of these things and pretend that they were after him, when not only were they not after him, the Director Comey had already told him personally that he wasn't under investigation. And Trump had been an FBI asset since at least 1981 and had worked with the FBI through all of his life. And we have the court cases to back that up, helping catch targets of criminal investigations, including counter-espionage and counter-intel investigations, not just the mob, but mobster Russians. So once you, and I've done an episode on that, you guys can look it up. It's the episode I did on Epstein is actually a really good one. How Batman helped catch Epstein, because I go in through all the documents that prove that Trump has worked as an FBI asset on more than one occasion, and so has the Trump org. And once you know those things, you see the kayfabe between the FBI and Trump. And that kayfabe has continued. So with this Comey indictment, to me, that just continues the kayfabe. But I have some problems with it. And my problems with the Comey indictment aren't just... It's not just that I think that Comey is actually a good guy who has been cast as a bad guy in the narrative. What's bothering me about it is that I have to, in order for the Comey indictment to land and work, I have to believe McCabe. And McCabe has been caught lying a number of times about this very subject. And then the other thing that bothers me about it is that it looks really bad. And I know maybe some people wouldn't care about that, but if Joe Biden did the same thing, if Joe Biden arrived at an indictment of Kash Patel using the exact same, and it had played out like this one did, I think we would have a problem with it. So let me set it up. If Joe Biden had appointed one of his personal attorneys to be if Joe Biden had pressured the Eastern District of Virginia to indict Kash Patel for possible leaks to John Solomon related to his work while he was Devin Nunes staff member at the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence. Remember when Cash was working there? So remember, Cash was under investigation supposedly for a while. So let's say that the Biden White House leaned on the Eastern District of Virginia's attorney's office to indict Kash Patel for that. And let's say that the U.S. attorney in the Eastern District of Virginia said no, and then ended up resigning because he wasn't going to do it. And then Joe Biden had appointed Bob Bauer or some other personal attorney to be the U.S. attorney in the Eastern District of Virginia. And then a couple days after appointing him, we got this indictment. And we got an indictment that was just as weak as this one. I think conservatives and right-wing media would be going bonkers, saying it was a sham, this is totalitarian, this is crooked. I think that it would just be, they'd be screaming about how wrong it was. And I think you guys know that. And that seems to be what happened here, is that the rumors are the White House leaned on the Eastern District of Virginia U.S. attorney to first indict Letitia James, right? And that didn't work out. But I think that investigation, I think she's going to be indicted in New York in the SDNY. The U.S. attorney in the Eastern District of Virginia resigns. And then Trump appoints Lindsay Halligan, who is an attorney and was his personal attorney, but she's only ever been a defense attorney. And she's worked civil litigation, I believe, as well. I don't remember the name of the law firm she worked at, but she's never been a prosecutor. And she gets thrown in as the temporary appointment. It's a temporary appointment as U.S. attorney for Eastern District of Virginia. And then delivers this Comey indictment days later. And the Comey indictment is weak. And it's also, there's weirdness with it, where they originally tried to bring 3 counts and then changed it to the 2 counts because one of them did approve. And there were all those stories about how the grand jury failed to return an indictment and that line prosecutors wouldn't bring the indictment. They said that this is too weak. We can't indict the former director on this. And when I try and invert the situation and I try and say, okay, if the same thing played out, but it was a Democrat president and it was against a Republican, if I try and flip it completely, I would have a problem with it. With the way it looked and the way it came about, with the weakness of it, I would have a problem with it. And I would at least say this doesn't look good. Now, maybe there's a crime there, and maybe the indictment should have been brought. So maybe we need more information. We haven't seen all the details and evidence of the indictment. There's probably going to be a superseding one. But I would be very tempted to cry foul, or I would cry foul on it and say, no, this is not good. And so I feel the same about this one. And it just doesn't sit well with me. And that's regardless of what I think about Comey. I'm just kind of venting here some of the things in my mind. I've been thinking about this all weekend. And in my last episode, I made a comment that, if you think Comey's a real bad guy and you want to get Comey, this isn't the way. And I stand by that this isn't the way. And let's say they do have evidence that Comey did leak, okay? So let's say that there's strong evidence, and actually this indictment is much stronger than it initially appears with what's on the docket. And Comey did he authorized someone to leak about an investigation, which is probably Hillary, and he committed a crime when he did that. And then he lied about it, and that's obstruction of Congress. You want that to be a strong indictment. But you want that to be from a professional prosecutor, I would think. You would want to do it in a way that is just pro, that is unassailable, I would think. But they didn't do that here. And so it leads me to believe that there's more going on here than we're initially seeing. Like, the point of this, the objective isn't Comey. Because this seems set up to fail. And I said that about Jack Smith. I said that about Jack Smith in the DC case. From the very beginning, I was like, this seems set up to fail because he brought the wrong charges. And sure enough, it failed. But he brought the wrong charges in that case. And there was questions about Jack Smith, whether or not he was legitimately appointed. Again, set up to fail. So I look at this and it has that feeling to me. I get that feeling about it, that sense of it. And it's set up to fail, and there's something else going on here other than what seems to be initially advertised. And so that's exciting because it's highly intriguing. But there's also that aspect of it that doesn't sit well with me. And as we go into this, I think it's going to keep coming up. So I thought about how to approach this on this episode, and I kind of thought I'd just vent just a little bit to you guys, some of my thoughts. And I'm not like frustrated by it, so maybe venting isn't the right word. I guess more like streaming some of my thoughts that I'm having about it. But I do think that it's a bad look. It's a bad look to have Lindsay Halligan be the one doing this. And that's no offense against her. I don't think anything negative about Lindsay Halligan. I know the left is attacking her, saying, she's a former beauty contestant or something like that. Like, so what? I don't care about that. I don't care. It's a silly thing to criticize. I remember, I seem to recall when she was his defense attorney, she had some pretty good press conferences or something. So she probably made some enemies in the media. Like Alina Hava did. Who actually I think is the more beauty contestant worthy person if you're interested. That's who I would put in a beauty contest. Sorry, Lindsay. There's sorry, Lindsay, but Alina catches my eye. All right, moving on. So I thought what we would get into today, besides me just sharing some of my thoughts, is some documents and Comey's response and some fake news. And let's look at what these leaks are about and what the leak investigation that was already done found. Now that I've kind of blurted out some of the thoughts that have been churning in my head about this, let's go into some documents. So here's my link tree. There, it's going to be in the description of the show. It's going to be in the profile. There you can find everywhere to follow, everywhere to watch, everywhere to listen, and all the ways to support. Thank you to everybody who has made purchases at Benson Honey Farms, Bootleg Products, Ko-Fi.com, Manly Cans, my merch store, Venmo, and most of all, thank you to everybody who is a paid subscriber over at justhuman.substack.com. Everything there is free. That's where I do my long form articles, and it's also where the videocast and podcast come out. If you want to listen to this on Apple Podcast or Spotify or wherever else, go to my Substack, justhuman.substack.com, and sign up for free, and then you can paste the link for that into your pod player, and you'll get the podcast. Also on Rumble is where I have playlists concerning all the various cases I've covered, including United States versus Comey. And I have one video there, and this video is going to go in that stack as well. You can find all the clips. I've been posting more clips recently, and we're going to get to this clip right here in a moment. All right, on the Comey docket. Weird things. So we went over this before right here. Actually, before I get into that, let me tackle a small piece of fake news. There was fake news going around that Comey was going to, I thought I grabbed the tweet. Maybe I just bookmarked it and I didn't. Caitlin Collins, there it is. Yeah. So the news went around that Comey was going to be surrendering the next morning. And a lot of people posted this. And then, and what was weird to me about this is that two sources told CNN that there was an initial expectation that Comey would surrender on Friday, but there was no warrant for his arrest according to the court record that would require an immediate surrender. But for some reason, two sources jumped out and told CNN Comey's gonna surrender the next day. And this reminds me this reminds me of games we've seen before around leaks around the Trump admin, and where they planted a false story and then traced where that false story went. And so I don't have any evidence of this. I'm just speculating here. I'm just putting a pin in this to remember this. If we learn later about something going on where they were trying to find some leakers, because somebody who had not seen this, had not looked at the documents on the docket yet, put out the story before these became public, before all of the rest of the documents hit, okay? Somebody put it out there to CNN. Two people did that, or at least one person put it out, and two people then communicated it to CNN. And these would be two sources that CNN was probably familiar with, and told them, hey, Comey's going to be there tomorrow. And one of the people they got was this person here, who really doesn't post hardly at all on X. Very rarely post on X. I wonder if they're over at Blue Sky now. But it stands out to me. I just, my initial impression of seeing that is that was purposefully planted to trace out a line of communication to see, okay, and because if you do that, you learn who talks to who. So if you only tell one person this false piece of information, and then it shows up on CNN, and it was provided through this person to this person, then you've just traced a line of sources to that news organization. So I just wonder about that. Anyway, Comey didn't surrender on Friday, and he was never going to. That was always a false story. He's going to be arraigned on October 9th. October 9th at 10 a.m. in Alexandria, Virginia. That's if a superseding indictment doesn't come out first. And I think a superseding indictment is inevitable here because this is far too weak. And it doesn't seem to be the point. I think this was done to preserve against the statute of limitations expiring today. When I'm recording this, the statute of limitations would have expired for this crime, which I'm not convinced was a crime. So that I think to fend that off, they went ahead and indicted him on this one thing. Now, Comey has a response. Actually, before I play his response, I'm going to save his response. I want to go back to this. On my recent episode, I sussed out a problem with this document, which is the failure to concur on an indictment. Here's the indictment, but they also logged, as per the rules of criminal evidence, a failure to return an indictment because they initially went with 3 counts. The first count was a false statement, the second count was a false statement, and then count 3 was obstruction of a proceeding. And when you look at these, you deduce that person 1 is not Trump, it's Hillary Clinton. And as I went over that in my last show, I sussed that out, and then I ended up actually jumping off of it because I had some thoughts I wasn't quite ready to put forth. That pause, that right there, me pausing like that, is me thinking, whoa, wait a minute. This isn't about Comey leaking information or approving a leak of information that has to do with the Trump investigation. This has to do with Hillary. And that's a horse of a different color. Everybody was assuming, and a lot of people assumed, that this had to do with Comey talking about or approving media leaks having to do with Russiagate and Trump, the investigation into Trump, which didn't exist. Comey never investigated Trump. That was McCabe. McCabe is who wanted to investigate Trump and tried to open up an investigation into Trump for obstruction. Under Comey, Comey never opened up an investigation into Trump. He was looking into collusion between members of the Trump campaign and Russians, not collusion between Trump and Russians, because Trump's already an FBI asset. He doesn't need to look into it. He knows that Trump isn't colluding with the Russians, because that campaign is basically the whole thing's a sting operation. So sometimes I just want to like I have an imaginary audience member in my head. Actually, let me tell you guys this. This is kind of funny. So sometimes when I'm in front of this mic, something I don't want to do is I don't want to imagine I'm talking to people who I disagree with. I want to imagine, or that I necessarily agree with. I'm just trying to imagine some of the people that I've met, some of you guys in my audience that I've met or that I've conversed with a bunch of times, and we've struck up a little bit of a friendship. And that includes people I've only spoke to online, and people I've done interviews with, and people that I've met at some of the Badlands events. So I kind of have like this. There's like and people that turn up in my chats and are in my comments. I kind of have there's like a rotating crew of people that I kind of bring that pop in and out of my head as I'm speaking into the microphone. And I think about their comments that they leave and some of the back and forth we have. And my brain kind of like throws up some of the comments you've made or might make. And so what I did on the advice of someone, because I complained to a friend that occasionally negative comments will get stuck inside my head, and then while I'm in front of this microphone speaking, I'll think those negative comments will come up, and I'll find myself being defensive, or at least feeling defensive, and I didn't want to do that. So what I did, my friend advised me that you should put up a picture or a symbol or a quote, or put something on the other side of the camera that reminds you of the audience, the person in the audience, a specific person you want to speak to, or a group of people, or an idea, some kind of concept that you put on the other side of the camera that reminds you of who your audience is and that you want to engage with and who you're making the content for. And I thought that was a great idea. So, and I already had the perfect thing to put there, which is this little frog that I got a long time ago at a science center with my boys. One of my boys picked it out for me. And so I have this frog, and this frog either sits right below my camera, or sometimes I put this frog on top of my camera. And I'll put it on top right now. And so sometimes when I'm doing this show, and this is one of the things that is happening with this Comey indictment, and as I've gone through the materials and prepping this show, is I sometimes have moments where I just want to slap the frog or slap the anon, right? And just be like, the whole thing is a sting operation. Don't lose sight of that. Like, don't lose sight of that. Don't think that that's like fallen away, or that was old news, or that never occurred, or that now we're onto something different. No, it is and has always been a sting operation against the swamp and against these deep state actors. And this is just a continuation of that. And when you seat that in its place, man, this is exciting, because when I go over here to this failure to return indictment and you read it, it's saying that Comey right here, while speaking to Congress, falsely stated to a U.S. senator during a Senate Judiciary Committee that he did not remember being taught of Person 1's approval of a plan concerning Person 2 and the presidential administration in the 2016 election. That is Hillary Clinton, Person 1, and Donald Trump, Person 2. It's count 2 right here, where it says Comey had not authorized someone else at the FBI to be an anonymous source in news reports regarding an FBI investigation concerning Person 1, meaning Hillary Clinton. That statement was false because, as Comey knew then and there, he had in fact authorized Person 3 to serve as an anonymous source. We don't know who Person 3 is. Person 3 may be Richmond, it may be James Baker, but the thing is, James Baker's already been investigated on this, and he was cleared. So it leads me to think it's Richmond, who has been the center of some recent media reportings, like this article from Just the News back on August 12th. Comey's media mole told the FBI he shaped the Russian narrative. And this is all about Richmond being the conduit, Daniel Richmond of Columbia University, being the conduit for Comey to leak to the media. And it was investigated as part of the FBI's Arctic Haze classified leaks inquiry. But then there's another count too. And that's the obstruction one. But we can see right here in the header, count 3 should be the obstruction. And count 1 and 2 should both be false statement charges. So, and then remember I pointed out in the last episode, the font changes here, like the scan of this changes. This is thinner font. There's something different between that page and this page. And then this page. So it gets weird. There's something else weird about this. A partial transcript was made available to the media of the hearing where this was signed by a judge. Oh man, I thought it left the well, that's not the one I wanted. Well, it does matter. So grand juries are more than 12 people and they need a majority to indict. And this one says 14 of 23 grand jurors voted to indict Comey on the 2 counts. So it wasn't, I mean, it was, that's all you need. That's all you need. But it's not like everybody on the grand jury voted to indict. But there's another one. Where's the transcript? I swear I saved the transcript. Oh, here it is. Here it is. So CBS News got to review part of the transcript of the hearing. And it was a magistrate judge, Lindsay Vala, is who heard this. And then now it's been assigned to Judge Nachmanov. Oh, wait, I'm not showing you guys my screen. You go back to this. My bad. So Lindsay Vala is the magistrate judge who had the hearing. And according to a transcript of the proceeding obtained by CBS News, Vala asked the new interim U.S. Attorney Lindsay Halligan why there were 2 versions of the indictment. And in here they report 14 of 23 jurors voted in favor, which is all that was needed. You just need 12 of the 23 to vote to indict. It's majority. But it sure would come across stronger if it had been like 20 out of 23 voted to indict, you know. But 2 versions of the indictment were published on the case docket, one with the dropped 3rd count and one without. Quote from the magistrate Judge Vala, she says, "So this has never happened before. I've been handed 2 documents that are in the Mr. Comey case that are inconsistent with one another," Vala said to Halligan. "There seems to be a discrepancy. They're both signed by the grand jury foreperson." She noted that one document did not clearly indicate what the grand jury had decided. Vala said, "The one that says it's a failure to concur in the indictment, it doesn't say with respect to one count. And if you look right here, there's a handwritten edit where it says count 1 only. As the foreperson of the grand jury, September 25th, 2025, I report that 12 or more grand jurors did not concur in finding an indictment in this case. That's what's in text. But then, and it's signed by the foreperson, but it was filed alongside the actual indictment. So what happened is that Lindsay Halligan handed up to the judge this right here, which is an indictment that is actually on the docket, signed Lindsay Halligan, but also handed up the failure to indict form. Vala said, it looks like they failed to concur across all three counts, so I'm a little confused as to why I was handed two things with the same case number that are inconsistent. Halligan initially responded that she hadn't seen that version of the indictment. Quote, so I only reviewed the one with the two counts that our office redrafted when we found out about the two counts that were true billed, and I signed that one. I did not see the other one. I don't know where that came from, she told the judge. The judge responded, you didn't see it? She said, no, I didn't see that one. So your office didn't prepare the indictment then? She said, no. I know. I prepared three counts. I only signed the one with two counts. I don't know which one the three counts you have in your hands. Judge said, okay, well, it has your signature on it. And Halligan responded, okay, well. And then that's the end of the transcript, or at least that they reposted. Vala also noted that the court session began late at 6:47 p.m. Thursday evening, telling the grand jurors, I don't think we've ever met this late, as she thanked them for their service. Halligan was sworn in on Monday, and then Thursday evening, almost 7 p.m., gets this indictment. It just doesn't look good, guys. This just doesn't look not very pro, right? So that U.S. Attorney's Office originally prepared a 3-count indictment. And we need to keep this in mind because it's by looking at that failed indictment, this one, that we can suss out who person one is. Because we know who that is right there. And then on the real indictment, what he actually got indicted for is this one, when he said he had not authorized someone else at the FBI to be an anonymous source in news reports. When he had, in fact, authorized person 3. And that's what makes this statement false. Okay, we're going to look into that next. We're going to look into the investigation into these leaks. All right, before we get to the other documents, I want to make sure that it's clear exactly what question was asked and whether or not. Well, I just want to make clear that this indictment, this count 1 that Comey was actually charged with, is about not whether or not he authorized someone else at the FBI to be an anonymous source in news reports, end quote, regarding an FBI investigation concerning person 1. Here is that question from Ted Cruz. I guess I should give you guys some audio. Hold up.
On May 3rd, 2017, in this committee, Chairman Grassley asked you point blank, quote, have you ever been an anonymous source in news reports about matters relating to the Trump investigation or the Clinton investigation? You responded under oath, quote, never. He then asked you, quote, have you ever authorized someone else at the FBI to be an anonymous source in news reports about the Trump investigation or the Clinton administration? You responded again under oath, no. Now, as you know, Mr. McCabe, who works for you, has publicly and repeatedly stated that he leaked information to the Wall Street Journal and that you were directly aware of it and that you directly authorized it. Now, what Mr. McCabe is saying and what you testified to this committee cannot both be true. One or the other is false. Who's telling the truth?
I can only speak to my testimony. I stand by what the testimony you summarized that I gave in May of 2017.
So your testimony...
That is what the indictment is saying is a lie. But that's McCabe. That's Comey's word against McCabe's word. And McCabe has already been caught lying a number of times, at least 4 times, according to the OIG report right here. Lack of candor right there. And it had to do with leaks. And he lied under oath. Also, in Senator Cruz's question right here, this said administration, but that wasn't what it was about, right?
Trump investigation or the Clinton administration.
Or the Clinton administration. That's different than Clinton investigation. Clinton investigation would be the Midyear Exam, the email server. What is the Clinton administration? Surely that's a misspeak. Surely that's a misspeak. Okay, let's look at the McCabe document came out first. So let's look at some things from this McCabe report. Let me look once more time. U.S. Senator during a Senate Judiciary Committee hearing, James Comey said that he had not authorized someone else at the FBI to be an anonymous source in news reports regarding an investigation concerning person 1. That'd be Hillary Clinton. That statement was false because, as James Comey knew then and there, he had in fact authorized person 3 to serve as an anonymous source. So person 3 is either McCabe, James Rybicki, James Baker. Or I don't think it's James Rybicki. Anyway, Rybicki, James Baker, or Daniel Richman. If we go to the report by Horowitz into McCabe, this report has to do with misconduct concerning disclosure of certain law enforcement sensitive information to reporter Devlin Barrett that was published online in the Wall Street Journal on October 30th, 2016 in an article entitled FBI in Internal Feud Over What? The Hillary Clinton Probe. So that makes sense that person 1 in the indictment is Hillary Clinton, right? Let me get that article. Let me get that Wall Street Journal article. Okay, here's that article. It's by Devlin Barrett, October 30th, 2016. So we know we have the right article. FBI in internal feud over Hillary Clinton probe. Laptop may contain thousands of messages sent to or from Mrs. Clinton private server. So what laptop is that? Anthony Weiner. The surprise disclosure that agents from the FBI are taking a new look at Hillary Clinton's email use lays bare, just days before the election, tensions inside the Bureau and the Justice Department over how to investigate the Democratic presidential nominee. Investigators found 650,000 emails on a laptop that they believe was used by former Rep. Anthony Weiner and his estranged wife, Huma Abedin. A close Clinton aide and underlying metadata suggest thousands of those messages could have been sent to or from the private server that Mrs. Clinton used while she was Secretary of State, according to people familiar with the matter. So there's the leak. It will take weeks at a minimum to determine whether those messages are work-related from the time Ms. Abedin served with Mrs. Clinton at the State Department. How many are duplicates of emails already reviewed by the FBI, and whether they include either classified information or important new evidence in the Clinton email probe. Remember, Comey had shut down the probe, and then he reopened it just days before the election, and he informed the Senate, as he promised he would, that he was reopening the investigation. And what does Mrs. Clinton say about this? What does Mrs. Clinton today say about Comey reopening that investigation? Let's just go to the context of this. July 5th, 2016, Comey announces to the whole nation at a press briefing, all on his own, famously without alerting the Obama White House or Loretta Lynch at the AG's office, announces that he's closing the Clinton email investigation and not bringing charges. And we can get in, that's another episode, a whole other episode of why he did that. But he tells Congress that if the case is ever reopened, he'll let them know. And then he does that on October 28th, 2016, which is exactly 1 year before Q posted for the first time, by the way, to the day, 1 year. He informs the Senate that, hey, in previous congressional testimony, I referred to the fact that the FBI had completed its investigation of former Secretary Clinton's personal email server. Due to recent developments, I am writing to supplement my previous testimony. In connection with an unrelated case, the FBI has learned of the existence of emails that appear to be pertinent to the investigation. I am writing to inform you that the investigative team briefed me on this yesterday, and I agreed that the FBI should take appropriate investigative steps designed to allow investigators to review these emails to determine whether they contain classified information, as well as to assess their importance to our investigation. Although the FBI cannot yet assess whether or not this material may be significant, and I cannot predict how long it will take us to complete this additional work, I believe it is important to update your committee about our efforts in light of my previous testimony. Signed, Comey. And this is when he reopened the investigation. And do you recall that Jason Chaffetz put that out? FBI director just informed me the FBI has learned of the existence of emails that appear to be pertinent to the investigation. The case has been reopened. Meaning the Hillary Clinton email case. And here's what Hillary Clinton says to this day about all of that playing out.
It wasn't a perfect campaign. There is no such thing. But I was on the way to winning until the combination of Jim Comey's letter on October 28th and Russian WikiLeaks raised doubts in the minds of people who were inclined to vote for me but got scared off. And the evidence for that intervening event is, I think, compelling, persuasive, and so we overcame a lot in the campaign. We overcame an enormous barrage of negativity, of false equivalency, and so much else. But as Nate Silver, who doesn't work for me, he's an independent analyst, but one considered to be very reliable, has concluded, if the election had been on October 27th, I'd be your president. And it wasn't. It was on October 28th, and there was just a lot of funny business going on around that. And ask yourself this.
And she says the election was on October 28th, which of course it wasn't, but that's what this letter means to her. She sees this letter as this is when the election actually happened. This is when the decisions were actually made on who voters made their decision. She blames this letter. That's why she says October 28th. She blames this letter because this is when she lost the election, when James Comey reopened the email case. And she's right. 538, Nate Silver did this whole long story, which I've read this whole story before on this show, talking about breaking down how this cost her the election. Comey sank her election. Another reason why it's always so funny to me to watch conservatives watch MAGA hate on Comey. But regardless. Okay, so back to this article. Investigators found blah, blah, blah. It will take weeks at a minimum. Include classified. Officials had to await a court order to begin reviewing the emails, which they received over the weekend. I kind of think Judge Chutkin was involved in that, if I'm recalling correctly. I could be wrong. But I feel like this ended up before Judge Chutkin, who was also the same judge that had Trump's January 6th case. According to a person familiar, again, there's a source, because they were uncovered in an unrelated probe of Mr. Weiner. The new investigative effort disclosed by FBI Director James Comey on Friday shows a bureau at times in sharp internal disagreement over matters related to the Clintons and how to handle those matters fairly and closely in the middle of a campaign election or national election campaign. Even as the probe of Mrs. Clinton's email use wound down in July, internal disagreements within the Bureau and the Justice Department surrounding the Clintons' family philanthropy heated up, meaning the Clinton Foundation. And again, according to people familiar with the matter. And what have we had to, guys? This article touches on everything we've had declass about over the summer. We had declass of an additional annex of the Durham report that had to do with the Clinton intelligence, the plan, Hillary's plan to frame Trump for Russia collusion. We had declass related to the mid-year exam, the Clinton email investigation, the extra appendix to the Horowitz report, the classified portion of it. We had declass of the leak investigation related to what? The leaking of sensitive intelligence and other in Comey's memos to the media and other media leaks from FBI to media, right? It's all right here. Doesn't it seem kind of like there was a plan to declass these things at this time, this summer, and put all of this stuff out ahead of this? And really ahead of whatever superseding indictment is coming or further indictments. And by declassing it now, it's not just about it being in the news and being available for people like me to nerd out on. It's about it being available to juries, I think. Because sure, you can get classified and things that are classified, you can get them before a jury, but it's a lot more work. It's a lot more work. But if it's been declassed, well, then it's already there. It's already available. Okay, the latest development began in October when New York-based FBI officials notified Andrew McCabe, the Bureau's second in command, that while investigating Mr. Weiner for possibly sending sexually charged messages to a teenage minor, they had recovered a laptop. Many of the 650,000 emails on the computer, they said, were from the accounts of Miss Abedin, again, according to people familiar with the matter. Those emails stretched back years, these people said, and were on a laptop that hadn't previously come up in the Clinton email probe. Miss Abedin said in late August that the couple were separating. The FBI had searched the computer while looking for child pornography, people familiar with the matter said. But the warrant they used didn't give them authority to search for matters related to Mrs. Clinton's email arrangement at the State Department. Mr. Weiner has denied sending explicit or indecent messages. In their initial review of the laptop, the metadata showed how many messages, apparently in the thousands, that were either sent to or from the private email server at Mrs. Clinton's home that had been the focus of so much investigative effort for the FBI. Senior FBI officials decided to let the Weiner investigators proceed with a closer examination of the metadata of the computer and report back to them. At a meeting early last week of senior Justice Department and FBI officials, a member of the department's senior national security staff asked for an update on the Weiner laptop, the people familiar with the matter said. At that point, officials realized that no one had acted to obtain a warrant, these people said. Mr. McCabe then instructed the email investigators to talk to the Weiner investigators and see whether the laptop's contents could be relevant to the Clinton email probe, these people said. After the investigators spoke, the agents agreed it was potentially relevant. Mr. Comey was given an update, decided to go forward with the case, and notified Congress on Friday with explosive results. Senior Justice Department officials had warned the FBI that telling Congress would violate policies against overt actions that could affect an election. And some within the FBI had been unhappy at Mr. Comey's repeated public statements on the probe, going back to the press conference in July. The back and forth reflects how the Bureau is probing several matters related directly or indirectly to Mrs. Clinton and her inner circle. New details show that senior law enforcement officials repeatedly voiced skepticism of the strength of the evidence in Bureau investigation of the Clinton Foundation, sought to condense what was at times a sprawling cross-country effort. Remember, we also had D-Class about that. And according to some people familiar with the matter, told agents to limit pursuit of the case. The probe of the foundation began more than a year ago to determine whether financial crimes or influence peddling occurred related to the charity. Some investigators grew frustrated, viewing FBI leadership as uninterested in probing the charity, these people said. Others involved disagreed sharply, defending FBI bosses and saying Mr. McCabe, in particular, was caught between an increasingly acrimonious fight for control between the Justice Department and FBI agents pursuing the Clinton Foundation case. It isn't unusual for field agents to favor a more aggressive approach than supervisors, and prosecutors think it's merited. But the internal debates about the Clinton Foundation show the high stakes when such disagreements occur surrounding someone who is running for president. The Wall Street Journal reported last week that Mr. McCabe's wife, Jill McCabe, received $467,000 in campaign funds in late 2015 from Political Action Committee of Virginia Governor Terry McAuliffe, a longtime Clinton ally. Mr. McAuliffe had supported his wife, Dr. McCabe, in the hopes she supported Dr. McCabe, who is Andy McCabe's wife, and hopes she and a handful of other Democrats might help win a majority in the state Senate. Dr. McCabe lost her race last November, and Democrats failed to win their majority. A spokesperson for the governor has said that any insinuation that blah, blah, blah. In February of this year, Mr. McCabe ascended from the number 3 position at the FBI to the deputy director post. When he assumed that role, officials say, he started overseeing the probe into Mrs. Clinton's use of a private email server for government work when she was Secretary of State. FBI officials have said Mr. McCabe had no role in the Clinton email probe until he became deputy director, and by then, his wife's campaign was over. But other Clinton-related investigations were underway within the FBI, and they have been the subject of internal debate for months, according to people familiar with the matter. You see how many of these, there was a lot of information from people familiar with the matter. And these people are familiar with a lot of matters related to the Clintons, aren't they? Early this year, 4 FBI field offices, New York, Los Angeles, Washington, and Little Rock, were collecting information about the Clinton Foundation to see if there was evidence of financial crimes or influence peddling, according to people familiar with the matter. Los Angeles agents had picked up information about the Clinton Foundation from an unrelated public corruption case. That would be Gilbert Chowdhury, who I brought up a while back. Do you guys remember we were looking at the Clinton timeline? Where is it? Whatever. It was Gilbert Chowdhury. The Washington field office was probing financial relationships between Mr. McAuliffe before he became a Clinton Foundation board member. And these people said, Mr. McAuliffe has denied any wrongdoing, and his lawyer has said the probe is focused on whether he failed to register as an agent of a foreign entity. Clinton Foundation officials have long denied any wrongdoing, saying it is a well-run charity that has done immense good. The FBI field office in New York had done the most work on the Clinton Foundation case and received help from the FBI field office in Little Rock, the people familiar with the matter said. In February, FBI officials made a presentation to the Justice Department, according to these people. Guys. Could it be? Is that the answer to why this was created? Remember this timeline document? That runs all the way up to August 23rd of 2017. I remember going over this with you guys, and I remember asking who made this and why. So it goes past this. It goes past this. It goes into 2017. So it couldn't have been for that. Never mind. It's stamped OIG. It runs through August of 2017. Okay. I thought maybe I had found an answer to that question because I mentioned this presentation to the DOJ. By all accounts, the meeting didn't go well. Some said that is because the FBI didn't present compelling evidence to justify more aggressive pursuit of the Clinton Foundation, and that the career anti-corruption prosecutors in the room simply believed it wasn't a very strong case. Others said that from the start, the Justice Department officials were stern, icy, and dismissive of the case. Quote, "That was one of the weirdest meetings I've ever been to," one participant told others afterward, according to people familiar with the matter. Anti-corruption prosecutors at the Justice Department told the FBI at the meeting that they wouldn't authorize more aggressive investigative techniques such as subpoenas, formal witness interviews, or grand jury activity. But the FBI officials believed they were well within their authority to pursue the leads and methods already underway, these people said. About a week after Mr. Comey's July announcement that he was recommending against any prosecution in the Clinton email case, the FBI sought to refocus the Clinton Foundation probe, with Mr. McCabe deciding the FBI's New York office would take the lead with assistance from Little Rock. The Washington field office, FBI officials decided, would focus on a separate matter involving Mr. McAuliffe. Mr. McCabe had decided earlier in the spring that he would continue to recuse himself from that probe given the governor's contributions to his wife's former political campaign. Within the FBI, the decision was viewed with skepticism by some, who felt the probe would be stronger if the Foundation and McAuliffe matters were combined. Others, particularly the Justice Department anti-corruption prosecutors, felt that both probes were weak, based largely on publicly available information, and had found little that would merit expanded investigative authority. According to a person familiar with the probes, on August 12, a senior Justice Department official called Mr. McCabe to voice his displeasure at finding the New York FBI agents were still openly pursuing the Clinton Foundation probe during the election season. Is that in this timeline? What did it say? August 12 of 2016. There's an August 10th phone call, redacted, and the Eastern District of New York redacted out a telephone conversation in which redacted requested a commitment from the EDY for moving forward with at least redacted. Redacted advised she would let redacted know upon review and discussion. 8/16, New York office redacted contacted EDNY redacted to request, and everything else is redacted. What was this alleging? According to a person familiar with the probes, on August 12th, a senior DOJ official called Mr. McCabe to voice his displeasure at finding that New York FBI agents were still openly pursuing the Clinton Foundation probe during the election season. Mr. McCabe said agents still had the authority to pursue the issue as long as they didn't use overt methods requiring Justice Department approvals. The Justice Department official was, quote, very pissed off, according to one person close to Mr. McCabe. That could be Lisa Page, and pressed him to explain why the FBI was still chasing a matter the department considered dormant. Others said the Justice Department was simply trying to make sure FBI agents were following long-standing policy not to make overt investigative moves that could be seen as trying to influence an election. Those rules discourage investigators from making any such moves before a primary or general election, and at a minimum, checking with anti-corruption prosecutors before doing so. Quote, "Are you telling me that I need to shut down a validly predicated investigation?" Mr. McCabe asked, according to people familiar with the conversation. After a pause, the official replied, "Of course not," and these people said. For Mr. McCabe's defenders, the exchange showed how he was stuck between an FBI office eager to pour more resources into a case and Justice Department prosecutors who didn't think much of the case, one person said. Those people said that following the call, Mr. McCabe reiterated past instructions to FBI agents that they were to keep pursuing the work within the authority they had. Others further down the FBI chain of command, however, said agents were given a much starker instruction on the case. Stand down, quote unquote. When agents questioned why they weren't allowed to take more aggressive steps, they said they were told the order had come from the deputy director, Mr. McCabe. Others familiar with the matter deny Mr. McCabe or any other senior FBI officials gave such a stand-down instruction. For agents who already felt uneasy about FBI leadership's handling of the Clinton Foundation case, the moment only deepened their concerns, these people said. For those who felt the probe hadn't yet found significant evidence of criminal conduct, the leadership's approach was the right response. In September, agents on the Foundation case asked to see the emails contained on non-government laptops that had been searched as part of the Clinton email case, but that request was rejected by prosecutors at the Eastern District of New York in Brooklyn. You know what? This right here, it mentions support. Where was it? I remember it saying something about support from EDNY. Right here on 823, U.S. Attorney Robert Capers to decide whether or not to move forward with the redacted. And then EDNY's criminal division was informed EDNY would not support the investigation. No further explanation was given. SDNY was asked if they would support it, and no response was provided at the time. Redacted had a conversation with SDNY Public Corruption, or PC, Redacted about the same matter, advised more than likely the decision will be not to proceed, and no explanation was given. And then 10/20 in September, there's a call from Deputy Director regarding Clinton Foundation and EDNY with Deputy Director directing no overt action, review only, and requesting Redacted relay the same to New York Special Agent in Charge Harpster. Deputy Director had received call from ODAG asking why New York office was shopping the Clinton Foundation case around. Redacted placed call to New York office. Redacted relaying Deputy Director's direction that there be no overt action, review only. So that's McCabe. That correlates to this article. And then 10/24, telephone conference between Redacted and Redacted on several different matters, including a brief discussion on the Wall Street Journal article, which is this. Surely it's this one right here we're reading. You see how every D class this summer relates to where we are now? This is exciting. Another update on the Wiener investigation on 10/25. Overt legal process and ability to get redacted for the Wiener redacted. Wiener investigation, Wiener case, Wiener laptop. Might be what's under there. Note this small group discussion occurred after two separate larger group discussions. Deputy Director McCabe advised need to move forward and request action consistent with DOJ guidelines relative to the election. In follow-up telephone conference between Redacted and Deputy Director is reminded that ADNY had previously stated not interested in pursuing the Clinton Foundation matter, but then changed to no legal process until after the election. Telephone conference with a bunch of people Redacted related to the leaks and Blank's displeasure. Gives specific guidance on warning personnel about the leaks. And then here's Wall Street Journal article. Telephone conference from Deputy Director to Redacted regarding Wall Street Journal article concern over leaks, and need to advise folks of media policy. Follow-up telecalls with redacted on Wall Street Journal article in Deputy Director's direction. Deputy Director sends an email recusing himself from the Clinton Foundation on November 1st. This article caused that. This one we're reading from Devlin Barrett. So, to go back to the indictment. James Comey made a false statement when he said he had, quote, not authorized someone else at the FBI to be an anonymous source in news reports regarding an FBI investigation concerning person one, Hillary Clinton. The statement was false because James Comey knew that he had in fact authorized person three to serve as an anonymous source in news reports regarding an FBI investigation concerning person one, Hillary Clinton. We're going back. Okay. Now, let's look at the documents we have about the leak investigation and see what that can tell us. Before we get into our next segment, going into more documents, just a reminder, my link tree is in the description of the show. It's also in my profile. And there you can find all the places to follow, all the places to watch, all the places to listen, and all the ways to support. If you get something out of my episodes, if you like them, please actually hit the like button. If you think others would enjoy them, hit the share button. And if you want to support, please consider going to one of my affiliates, such as Benson Honey Farms or Bootleg Products for chili and salsa and sauces. Or if you just want to buy me a cup of coffee, ko-fi.com. I really appreciate it. My coffee is absolutely necessary. I need delicious coffee in order to go through all these documents. And if you want to become a subscriber, that is the best way. If you're looking for a way that you can support me year over year or month over month, justhuman.substack.com. It's free, and you should be signed up there for free anyway. But if you want to be a supporter, this is the best way. Justhuman.substack.com, a paid subscription there. And I thank you to everybody who is a paid subscriber. You guys, you're my main line support, and I really appreciate you. Okay. Now, more documents. I'm excited. This just got me, like, I feel like I just had 2 espressos, and of course I have had a lot of coffee, so it could be a little bit of that. This will probably be my last cup for this episode. But reading that article and then linking all these things again and linking them to this Clinton Foundation timeline. Oh man. I can't help but think, guys, this is just another part of the sting operation, this Comey indictment. It's another part of the sting operation. This is going to get us right back to Comey versus McCabe, and McCabe is a Clintonite. McCabe is a Clintonite through and through. And the discovery in this, and Comey's fighting this. Comey said, I'm taking this case to trial. Let me grab that real quick, because actually I think some people would find it, most of the right, where they've seen Comey's response to the indictment, most of the commentary I've seen from the right on it is just, mocking, just saying, Comey's just annoying, he's so full of himself. It's just the usual mocking things. But if you think of Comey, as I'm scrolling looking for it, this is actually ridiculous. Like here, me just show you guys. So I type in Comey and start looking. And most of what I see is people's going, look how evil, look how fucking evil James Comey is. He's so horrible. In case you forget, they treated me so bad. James Comey was so mean to me. It's just like, it's outrage bait. It's outrage bait, trying to get you more and more outraged. And yeah, I don't know. Comey is an evil man. When I see it, I just by the way, this is a lie. James Comey lied to the FISA court 17 times. That's a lie. That in itself is a lie. That's not the full Comey clip. I want the full Comey response clip. By the way, this is also a lie. Kash Patel confirms that James Comey ran an off-the-books honeypot operation in 2015. That's a lie, and Kash Patel said that that's not true. But that doesn't stop people from repeating it. I'm looking for the video that Comey posted on his Instagram. Oh yeah, here's where Comey was teasing Trump, or supposedly taunting Trump. Check this out.
I'm still considered a villain in MAGA world. I hope I said that correctly. Although,
see, sometimes the kayfabe, this is kayfabe, and he's acknowledging that he is a villain in MAGA world. That's his character role that he took on.
yeah, I'm still considered a villain in MAGA world. I hope I said that correctly. Although I've offended enough people in MAGA world, it doesn't matter at this point. I'm not sure exactly why that is. I often joke I'm the relationship that Trump can't get over. Wakes up in the middle of the night thinking about me and how I'm living my best life. I think it has some combination of I really have had a happy, productive life since then, and that I spoke out about him, and that despite their absolute best efforts, they were never able to get me.
That's from May 22nd. Where is his response? Oh, look, there's me. There's me again. Maybe I need to type in Comey response. Maybe that'll get it for me. Here it is. Okay. Lock James up. He's such a bad man. We got, guys, something happened with me a while back. Years ago, something happened with me. And it's been clarifying. It's been clarifying. Sometimes it's frustrating, but most time it's clarifying. Is that once you see that the people on the right, so many of the media and individuals and influence accounts, once you see that the things they say and advocate for, it's the same as what the left does. They have their same cast of characters and villains, and they say the same things. It just, you see it, you just see the manipulation and the emotional, the agitprop. You just see it. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. And things like this bring it out.
The reservoir is in grave danger right now. Trump and the hacks who lead the Department of Justice are hammering at the dam day after day, trying to turn it into just another gold leaf covered Trump subsidiary. Our best hope.
Oh wait, this is when his daughter got fired, which by the way, she's suing for a job back, and she should. And she should. Is this it? Yeah, this is Trump. I think this is it.
But
okay.
My family and I have known for years.
Oops, that's too loud. I'm sorry, guys. I had it boosted when the last video was low.
My family and I have known for years that there are costs to standing up to Donald Trump. But we couldn't imagine ourselves living any other way. We will not live on our knees, and you shouldn't either. Somebody that I love dearly recently said that fear is the tool of a tyrant.
That's Maureen Comey, what she said in her letter about getting fired.
And she's right. But I'm not afraid. And I hope you're not either. I hope instead you are engaged, you are paying attention, and you will vote like your beloved country depends upon it, which it does. My heart is broken for the Department of Justice, but I have great confidence in the federal judicial system, and I'm innocent. So let's have a trial and keep the faith.
Do you know who hopes they don't have a trial? Andrew McCabe. Okay. All right. So in this investigation here, this is Arctic Haze. This is from the D class of some 266 documents we got. And actually, I might switch to this one because over here, it's easier to control F if I need to. Okay. Than it is on Scribd. I like Scribd for a lot of things, but when you do the find in the document stuff and you try and control F, it tends to glitch out and want to reload, and it gets really annoying. Okay. So in this PDF, yeah, it's this one right here, right? Okay, so if you want to look at this yourself, if you go and look up these D-class email investigation documents, you're looking for the document from September 8th, 2021, which would be during the Garland DOJ, right? Which, ooh, Garland, bad guy. We're all supposed to hate Merrick Garland. Ooh, Bill Barr, bad guy. Everybody's supposed to hate Bill Barr. Oh, there's so many pretend villains. Okay. All these pretend villains. You really don't need to be worried about the pretend villains, honestly. You need to be worried about the pretend good guys. Okay, this has to do with the closing of Arctic Haze. And this part's redacted. We get out here. All right, factual predication. FBI Washington Field Office opened the Arctic Haze investigation based on a redacted, dated June 23rd, 2017. The redacted related that a New York Times article contained classified information here and after the classified information, quote unquote, held by redacted. Now, I'm going to take a guess that what fits right here is referral, and what fits right here might be Comey. What do you think? What do you think? Think I might be right? The article was titled, Comey Tried to Shield the FBI from Politics, Then He Shaped an Election. That's a different article. This one is one of my favorite articles that I've ever read, honestly. I really love this New York Times article. Does it give me a link right here? That's it reposted at City Data. This is it. I've read it before on this show, many podcasts ago. I really love that article. And Richmond was a source for that article. Okay, Daniel Richmond. Let me look for... While that's loading. The article was titled, blah, blah, blah. The article was written by New York Times reporter Matt Apuzzo, Michael Schmidt, Adam Goldman, and Eric Lichtblow. The article discussed the FBI mid-year exam investigation concerning Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. Let me make sure of something. Hold on. Well, I went to check, and I found the font and the font size and the font spacing. I'm not sure about this block right here. Central Intelligence Agency, CIA lead. And I'm thinking this is criminal referral, but it doesn't quite fit. So I don't think I have that. I know it would come from the CIA because the CIA had that. I'm pretty sure it would come from the CIA anyway. But look, this fits. The CIA referral related that a New York Times article contained classified information here and after the classified information held by Richmond. I checked Comey, and Comey doesn't fit in that block very well. But CIA referral and held by Richmond are dead ringers. And that's what it would be. Richmond is the source for that article. We already know that. And that has to do with the Renteria memo and the Clinton plan intelligence, which means it was the basis of lost. There we go. Which means Arctic Haze would have been the investigation that led to the indictment they didn't get to bring, right? Right here. The count that failed. Oops, my bad. The count that failed, that the grand jury failed to bring, has to do with the Arctic Haze investigation that Durham was part of, and that, if I remember correctly, Durham declined to bring charges on. And this investigation right here was about Durham and the U.S. Postal Inspection Service. Tropic Vortex was also right there. And this had to do with leaked to the media about that classified information that was obtained from the Dutch intelligence on Clinton's plan to frame Trump. And when you get into this, you get to these redaction blocks. That portion's redacted. This is all redacted. This is redacted. This is redacted. The conclusion, a part of the conclusion is redacted. Case is closed. And yet it appears that Trump's DOJ just tried to bring a criminal referral on that. Or they just tried to bring an indictment against Comey for lying about that case. Let's see. Investigative efforts failed to identify the source or sources of unauthorized public disclosure. The investigation has not yielded sufficient evidence to criminally charge any person, including Comey or Richmond, with making false statements or with substantive offenses under the investigation, and then large section of redactions. And it says right here, where the largest section of redactions begins right here. Although Richmond later told the interviewing agents Comey never asked him to talk to the media, comma, redacted, 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 redacted. Richmond claimed Comey never asked him to talk to the media. So that's the count they didn't bring. All right. So, and yet Comey's been indicted for supposedly authorizing person 3 to serve as an anonymous source. And we have to assume person 3 is most likely Richmond, number 1. 2 would be James Baker. But I think Richmond's the most likely person that person 3 is going to be, right? So let's look at let's look at the next piece. Okay, I was about to move on, but I'm cutting this into the podcast because I want to make sure that we're clear on this. We were just looking at the Arctic Haze investigation, which was looking back at all these other leak investigations, and I showed some redacted sections. One of the things that Arctic Haze looked back at was Tropic Vortex, which was run by that's the one with John Durham, and that had to do with a different article. That one had to do with this New York Times article. Comey tried to shield the FBI from politics, then he shaped an election. The source for this article, which is from April 2017, the source to this article was determined to be Richmond. In Richmond, this is one of the things that's going to make it very difficult to prove this charge against Comey, not that one, this one. He had authorized someone else at the FBI to be an anonymous source on news reports. Is that this, in interviewing Richmond, the investigation revealed New York Times article contained several quotes attributed to Daniel Richmond, which defended Comey's decisions to make unilateral statements about the Clinton email investigation, the Midyear Exam. In 2015, Comey instructed FBI to hire Richmond as a special government employee, an SGE, and to grant him top secret clearance with access to sensitive compartmented information. FBI records indicated Richmond was hired to work on, quote, going dark matters. The investigation revealed Comey also hired Richmond so Comey could discuss sensitive matters, including classified information, with someone outside of the FBI's regular leadership. Comey also used Richmond as a liaison to the media. On several occasions, Richmond spoke with the media without consultation with FBI or DOJ's Office of Public Affairs. Richmond contacted journalists to correct stories that were critical of Comey, the FBI, and to shape future press coverage. Richmond did this both when he was a special government employee and after he resigned from the FBI. The investigation revealed Richmond had been a source for Michael Schmidt, one of the reporters credited with writing the article at issue, in the New York Times since at least 2008. Richmond first spoke with Schmidt regarding the investigation into illegal activities in sports. Prior to Richmond becoming an SGE, Schmidt visited Richmond's house numerous times. The New York Times quoted Richmond several times, both on the record and on background, in stories regarding Jim Comey. After he was terminated by President Trump, Comey used Richmond as a conduit to convey to the media memoranda of his meetings with President Trump. So going back to the indictment. Authorize someone else at FBI to be an anonymous source in news reports. Richmond fits, but there's some caveats to that. Is it while Richmond was still at the FBI? Is it while Comey was still at the FBI? Did Richmond do all these when he was sources for these reports? When he was a source for these reports, did he do so on his own? Obviously, we need to know more, but it gets shaky because there's times when Richmond was authorized and there seems like there's times when he's not. Richmond acts on his own sometimes. And then we got this big redacted section here. And I think it's still redacted because it's part of this indictment against Comey. It's talking about something specific here. Like it might be saying, for example, in this article, in this article, in this article. Then the redactions are lifted here, and it says, although Richmond later told the interviewing agents Comey never asked him to talk to media. And then the next section's redacted. And I think this section right here really speaks to, I think that this right here is going to turn out to relate directly to the indictment in this portion. Richmond's a very strong candidate to being person 3. Now, in the next section that's not redacted, it says November 22nd, 2019, the Arctic Haze investigative team interviewed Richmond. According to Richmond, Comey and Richmond talked about the hammering Comey was taking from the media concerning his handling of the Midyear Exam investigation, the Clinton email investigation. Richmond opined Comey took comfort in the fact Richmond had talked to the press about his feelings regarding Comey's handling and decision-making on the Midyear Exam investigation. Richmond claimed Comey never asked him to talk to the media. According to Richmond, he and Comey had private conversation in Comey's office in January 2017. The conversation pertained to Comey's decision to make a public statement on the Midyear Exam investigation. Comey told Richmond the tarmac meeting between Lynch and Clinton was not the only reason which played into Comey's statement on the Midyear Exam investigation. According to Richmond, Comey told him of Lynch's characterization of the investigation as a quote-unquote matter and not that of an investigation. Richmond recalled Comey told him there was some weird classified material related to Lynch which came to the FBI's attention. So that's going to be the Russian reports from Dutch intelligence, right? Comey did not fully explain the details of the information. Comey told Richmond about the classified information, including the source of the information. Richmond understood the information could be used to suggest Lynch might not be impartial with regards to the conclusion of the Midyear Exam investigation. Richmond understood the information about Lynch was highly classified and it should be protected. Richmond was an SGE at the time of that meeting. According to Richmond, he and Schmidt had a conversation shortly after the meeting with Comey in or around January 2017. Richmond claimed Schmidt brought up the classified information and knew more about it than he did. How did Schmidt know this? Richmond was pretty sure he did not confirm the classified information. However, Richmond told the interviewing agents he was sure, quote, with a discount, that he did not tell Schmidt about the classified information. I'm not sure what the with a discount remark means. Richmond did not know who gave Schmidt the classified information. Richmond acknowledged he had many discussions with Schmidt about the article as an SGE, and even after he resigned as an SGE. Richmond acknowledged he contributed more to the article than what was attributed to him by name. Richmond also stated he knew Schmidt talked to numerous other government sources for information on the article. And then we have more of a redacted section, which might be where they're talking about other people that might be indicted or other sources of information, but it's a lot of redactions. Finally, we get to June 29th, 2021. Comey provided consent via his counsel for the FBI to conduct a limited search of his Apple iPhone. The FBI conducted a forensic examination of the phone. The examination indicated the telephone contained 4 voicemail messages, 4 instant messages, 2 email messages, and 51 images from December 1st, 2016 to May 1st, 2017. None of this material contained information relevant to the investigation. Investigators then turned their attention to individuals who were on the redacted and had not yet been interviewed. And then more redactions. After discussing the status of investigative leads and resources available with the U.S. Attorney's Office and DOJ, FBI investigative team was directed to interview only those officials who might have had a motive to protect Comey. Therefore, the FBI only interviewed 8 of these officials, who consisted mainly of former FBI officials. All of these officials denied providing classified information to the New York Times. Conclusion. The investigation has not yielded sufficient evidence to criminally charge any person, including Comey or Richmond, with making false statements or with substantive offenses under investigation. More redactions. Okay. If we go back to Tropic Vortex with Durham. We get the same restatement about why the U.S. Postal Service is involved, and we've gone over that. Scroll down. Okay, March 22nd, 2017, DOJ gets a criminal referral from doesn't say, regarding unauthorized public disclosure of classified information. In general, such investigations are handled by blah, 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 but this time we're going to do Durham and U.S. Postal Inspection Service because one of the subjects is a former FBI National Security Division employee. In or about January 2019, Criminal Division received a draft memorandum from the District of Columbia regarding the aforementioned investigation. Upon finalization, the memorandum will be submitted to case file. DC indicated that the investigation may contain information relevant to other FBI investigations such as Echo's Fate, Foggy Falls, etc., etc. Therefore, Washington Field Office is opening a full investigation under the codename Tropic Vortex. And their investigation here is unauthorized public disclosure of U.S. government classified information. Scroll down. The criminal referral indicated that the New York Times published an article in October 2016. So this is the one we looked at. This is a different one. We haven't looked at this article yet. Containing unauthorized public disclosure of classified information. One of the subjects of the investigation was FBI General Counsel James Baker, who had previously worked in the National Security Division. To avoid potential conflict of interest or an appearance thereof, Fuente assigned the investigation to Durham and the Postal Inspection Service. They provided a memorandum later. The October 2016 New York Times article indicated there were 2 U.S. government sources for the article. The investigation revealed Baker to be one of the 2 sources. However, the U.S. Postal Inspection Service also revealed Baker disclosed U.S. government classified information to the New York Times under the belief he was ultimately instructed and authorized to do so by then FBI Director James Comey. So, this could be what this indictment is about. And in that case, person 3 would be James Baker, not Daniel Richman. So if this indictment relates to Arctic Haze, then it's Daniel Richman. If it relates to Tropic Vortex, then it's going to be Baker. During interviews, Baker indicated FBI Chief of Staff James Rybicki instructed him to disclose the information to the New York Times, and Baker understood Rybicki was conveying this instruction and authorization from Comey. Additional details are classified, top secret probably is what's under there, and are included in the attachment. The U.S. and Postal Service investigation redacted. Additional details are classified redacted and are included in the attachment. Based on the evidence, which included interviews, access, emails, phone records, and redacted, potentially applicable criminal law and statutes, and U.S. blah, 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 Durham memo recommended no prosecution of Baker or anyone else for the unauthorized public disclosure. The full details of this recommendation are in the Durham memo. January 2019, Washington Field Office received a draft memo from D.C. regarding the Postal Service investigation in the Durham memo. February 2019, Washington Field Office received and blah, 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 including but not limited to Echo's Fate, Genetic Christmas, Foggy Fall, Siren's Lure. In response, they incorporated this information. Remember, they keep opening this and closing it, and opening it and closing it. The Washington Field Office did not identify any additional investigative leads regarding Baker or the second. And then it's redacted what source, but I'm guessing it's FBI source for the October 2016 article. Washington Field Office did identify one additional investigative lead as follows. On March 4th, 2017, Trump tweeted that he had just learned former President Barack Obama tapped his phones at Trump Tower. In an article was run in the New York Times, Comey asked Justice Department to reject Trump's wiretapping claim. The March 2017 New York Times article reported a U.S. government official indicated Comey asked the DOJ to publicly reject the assertions in President Trump's tweets, but the DOJ had not released any such statement. The tweets and article occurred shortly after the initiation of the U.S. Postal Inspection Service investigation. During interviews for the U.S. Postal Service investigation, multiple DOJ and FBI officials were asked about their discussions, actions, and responses to the tweets and article. Although these officials provided opinions on the identity of the U.S. government official in the article, the U.S. Postal Inspection investigation did not determine who it was. On October 21st, 2019, the Washington field office compiled the findings from the U.S. Postal Service investigation regarding the tweets and the March 2017 New York Times article, and from additional investigations by the Washington field office. The findings revealed Rybicki forwarded an email containing a proposed statement to the news media regarding the tweets to his personal email account. Rybicki's personal email. So Rybicki forwarded an email to himself. There was a draft statement. The proposed statement originated from Comey and appeared to be at the unclassified level of classification. Washington field office assessed Rybicki did so in furtherance of a potentially unauthorized disclosure to the news media, which appeared to be at the implicit direction of Comey. Appeared to be. Washington field office documented these findings and assessment in redacted and presented them to the attorneys, agents, and professional staff assigned to Tropic Vortex, Echo's Fate, Foggy Falls, Genetic Christmas, and Siren's Lure. Based on the findings and assessment, U.S. Attorney's Office for D.C. issued a preservation letter for Rybicki's personal email account in furtherance of potential legal process. However, the U.S. Attorney's Office for D.C. subsequently declined to pursue additional legal process as the proposed statement appeared to be unclassified. Washington field office also prepared materials regarding the proposed statement for use in the November 2019 interview with Rybicki, but declined to use them. As such, Washington field office considers this additional investigative lead complete. So, if this count is about that, then it's James Rybicki. Okay, so you see how none of this is very firm? It's just not very firm. But anyway, I'm just trying to identify who person 3 is. And so those are our candidates. And it depends on which news reports it's talking about and whether or not you believe not whether or not you believe, whether or not Comey really did authorize Daniel Richman or James Baker or James Rybicki. But that's all we have on this indictment. This is not a speaking indictment. It doesn't give us a lot to go off of. And surely we'll get more and we'll get a better idea of exactly which news reports it's talking about. But I don't think it's any coincidence at all that these things were declassified. Here we go. We got got 266 pages right here of declassified documents having to do with these leak investigations. But only this section of it has this heavy redactions, and it's all around Richmond. So if I'm going to place a bet on it, then it has to do with Daniel Richman. Okay, let's go back. Let's go back to the question. Let's go back to the question, right? Let's go right here. Let's listen to the question that sets up the indictment count again.
On May 3rd, 2017, in this committee, Chairman Grassley asked you point blank, quote, have you ever been an anonymous source in news reports about matters relating to the Trump investigation or the Clinton investigation? You responded under oath, quote, never.
That question hinges on it being the news reports being about the Trump investigation or the Clinton investigation. So let's go back and look at what these news articles are about. This one is about the Clinton investigation. And we know that Daniel Richmond was a source for this. And we know that in the indictment, person one is Hillary Clinton. And we know that because of the indictment of the count they failed to bring right here. So to me, I'm going to say that this is about this article and Daniel Richmond and Hillary Clinton. Of course, it could be said that this article is about the Trump investigation too. It's kind of about both. I feel like I've presented enough to you guys that I should probably stop because it gets there's quite a bit here and it gets kind of murky bouncing between all of these things. And it makes me think that probably that's enough for this episode. And there's several other things I want to get into about this, but I think I should save it for my next episode. Because what I really want to go into next is the IG reports, the Horowitz reports on both McCabe and on Comey, but those are fairly lengthy. The McCabe one is 39 pages, and the Comey one is 80 pages. So they're both. It's too much for this article, but or this episode, I mean. Yeah. Okay, so let me wrap it up. Let me wrap it up. I'm gonna tell you what I think. I'm just gonna throw this out there. I'm just gonna throw out where I think this is gonna end up going. So I think this ends up going to a superseding indictment that involves other people. And I think it's part of a discovery process that has been planned. So, yep, I'm going to go fully there that I think that this is like some 5D chess, not just by Trump, but by Comey. And I think it's designed to get us into a lot of, it's going to provide us some discovery that was planted long ago and we were supposed to get from long ago. And I'm going to show you guys a clue. I'm going to show you a clue that Comey left us. Let's see. Second, find it. So part of the investigation into Comey, and I'm gonna we'll get into this more when we look at the IG report on Comey, which a while back President Trump said that everybody should read. But one of the things Comey did is that he saved a lot of memos for himself, and he shared them with these memos with some select people. And in these memos, he wrote something that has always stood out to me. And what Comey would do is that he would meet and talk to the president, and then he would go to his computer or he would go to his laptop or whatever, and he would write down some notes about the conversation he just had with the president. And I want to see, there's a specific one that he said something. Where is it? Need to show right here. So we'll read all of these memos on the next episode, I think, when we go over the IG report. But Comey left, he wrote memos to himself after a meeting with the president. And you probably recall this. And we have these memos now. And actually, some of them parts of them make more sense now because we know some of the material that was being talked about, including the Clinton Plan Intelligence and the Dutch AI VSD reports and all those things. They're mentioned in here. And what would happen is after Comey met with President Trump, either at a dinner or just a private conversation, he would then type up this memo. And some of these memos he sent to his chief of staff, Rebicki, and some of them he just kept to himself. And he took copies of some of these memos. We'll get all into it in the IG report. And in these memos, they discuss him being the FBI director and how badly Trump wanted him to stay FBI director. And they talk about the job, and they talk about Mike Flynn and concerns about Flynn, and they talk about the leaks. And the leaks come up several times, such as in this memo right here. Trump asked whether the FBI leaks, and I answered that, of course, in an organization of 36,000, we were going to have some of that. But I said, I think the FBI leaks far less than people often say. I predicted he, like all presidents, would discover the entire government leaks like crazy, and explained that it often comes from the first or second hop out from those actually working on the sensitive thing. And then they get into the loyalty thing, which a whole bunch has been made of him asking for loyalty. And then they talk about the Clinton investigation and Lynch wanting to call it a matter, and him going into, and they talk about McCabe. This is in this memo. I think this is the second memo, maybe. Talk about his job. I can't control F this because it's just scan, so I can't just jump to each leak discussion. There's the next memo. Meeting at the White House at 4 p.m., meet and greet with Chief of Staff Reince Priebus. As he goes in, he sees Bill Priestap and Jim Boone, who are about to meet with Vice President Pence, and they're going to talk about Mike Flynn. We'll deal with Trump's comments on Flynn in another episode. A lot of people haven't paid much attention to him. Let's see, we'll go to, I'm looking for where the next leak. Here we go. Comey warns him about the intelligence they were getting. This has to do with the Steele reports and all of those things and stuff that was going to end up in the media, right? And him telling him, I think the incoming president needs to know about some of the stuff that might be mentioned. And he explained to him at our dinner about the golden showers thing. He then asked about leaks of the fact of redacted and that it was briefed to the incoming president. I said I didn't know where it came from, but I suspect it came from folks who have left the government. He asked whether it could have come from the FBI. I said it was possible, but extremely unlikely in his view. We talked about leaks in general, and I explained my view, meaning Comey's view, that they almost always come from one or two hops out and that every president is plagued by them. He asked if we had ever caught an FBI leaker. I said we had, but it was a rare thing because it almost always turned on our willingness to go after reporter records. He then recalled the Obama administration conflict with James Rosen on Fox, and he also mentioned the leak of the readouts of presidents' calls from foreign leaders. Now, speaking of going after reporter records, my favorite article that I've ever written, right here, Small Clues, Sealed Cases, and Future Shock, is about just that, the DOJ going after reporters' records. And I found a case where they did just that. They went after 6 email accounts that had to do with the very same people, Eric Lichtbau, Michael Schmidt, and all of these same exact people that are now at issue in these leaks. And who was the guy hired with deal with this? Adam Small. What does Adam Small specialize in? RICO. What do we keep on hoping is going to happen? A RICO case. And who was also involved? Special Counsel Durham. And what did Special Counsel Durham also do? He investigated the leaks. So way back here in these Comey conversations, way back, in the very first months of the Trump admin, just as Trump is taking office in January and February, and he's having these private conversations with James Comey. What are they talking about? Leaks. And what does Trump want? He wants him to catch the leakers. And what does Comey want to do? Well, guess what? Comey wants to catch them too. Trump asked him if this was a private conversation, and Comey replied that it was. They went and talked about FISAs and Flynn, and they also talked about who the point man was for Comey to talk to between him and the president, and then it was Reince Priebus, and they talked about some other things. Let's keep going. Talked about McCabe, and then another incident where readouts of President Trump's calls with the president of Australia and Mexico were leaked. He was very concerned about it. And then the golden showers thing came up again. He then pivoted to Bill O'Reilly. Let's see. Another meeting. This is on, where's the date for this one? This one is Valentine's Day. Valentine's Day meeting. Oval Office meeting, 4 p.m. AG and Secretary of DHS were in earlier and remained in the Oval Office. Comey's meeting began at 4:15 with the president. There were about a dozen people in the Oval Office for a Homeland Security session. He sat facing the president over the Resolute desk in a semicircle of 6 chairs. Deputy Director CIA sat to his left. Director NCTC to his right. Staff members included Tom Bossert. Kushner was there. Steve Bannon was there. Mike Dempsey, VP. At the completion of the session, the president thanked everyone and said he wanted to speak to Comey alone. The AG lingered momentarily by my chair, but the president thanked him and said he wanted to meet with Jim. He repeated this at least one more time to usher people out. Everyone left except Jared Kushner, who stopped by my chair to shake hands and exchange pleasantries, including a few brief words about the challenges of the email investigation. The president joined in this brief exchange, but then told Mr. Kushner that he wanted to meet with me. That left the two of us alone, just Comey and Trump. He began by saying he wanted to talk about Flynn, and then said Flynn hadn't done anything wrong in his call with the Russians. He's a good guy, but he has concerns about Flynn, and he has to let him go. He asked if I had seen Sean Spicer's press briefing, said he hadn't, blah, blah, blah. And then he talked about the leaks. It is really about the leaks. He then reviewed some detail, the leaks of his calls with the leaders of Mexico and Australia, including how the calls had gone and how he assumed the calls he made on this beautiful phone were confidential. How could it come from Mexicans? It couldn't have come from the Mexicans or the Australians, and how the transcripts actually include things he doesn't remember saying. And then it makes us look terrible. And the leaks were terrible. Comey tried to interject several times to agree with him about the leaks being terrible, but was unsuccessful because Trump was going off. When he finished, Comey said that he agreed very much that it was terrible that his calls with foreign leaders leaked. Comey, said they were classified and he needed to be able to speak to foreign leaders in confidence. And then note, because this is an unclassified document, I'll be limited to how I describe what I actually said next. I, meaning Comey, then explained why leaks purporting to be about FBI intelligence operations were also terrible and a serious violation of the law. I explained that the FBI gathers intelligence in part to equip the president to make decisions, and if people run around telling the press what we do, that ability will be compromised. I said I was eager to find leakers and would like to nail one to the door as a message. I said something about it being difficult, and he replied that we need to go after the reporters and referred to the fact that 10 or 15 years ago, we put them in jail to find out what they know, and it worked. He mentioned Judy Miller by name. I explained that I was a fan of pursuing leaks aggressively, but that going after reporters was tricky for legal reasons and because DOJ tends to approach it conservatively. He replied by telling me to talk to Sessions and see what we can do about being more aggressive. I told him I would speak to the Attorney General. That wrapped up their leak conversation, I believe. This note is from March 1st. I don't remember if leaks come up again here. Sergey Million comes up. McCabe comes up. McAuliffe comes up. G7. Right here, Comey, they talk about him appearing before Congress and how Comey told him to his face he wasn't under investigation. But Comey can't, as FBI director, he can't state who is and who isn't under investigation publicly. Trump wants him to say publicly that he's under investigation, but Comey can't. He can't say that. But he confirms, yeah, you're not under investigation. It's right there, March. There, this is March 30th, 2017. Do leaks come up here in this note? Jordanians? No, this is the final one. Yeah. All right. So because I just find it fascinating that you can go back to these Comey memos, and the Comey memos happen to be about the very things that are at issue now, and that we just got a ton of declass on: the Clinton investigation, the Clinton investigation in the foundation, the Midyear Exam investigation, the Durham declass annex that had to do with the Russian intelligence was discussed in these memos. The leak investigation, all of these things. And then now Comey is indicted. And who's it have to do with? Hillary Clinton, and then leakers to media. And it's exactly what Comey left these memos about to himself. I don't know. Maybe I'm just a crazy conspiracy theorist. Maybe you are too. One thing I know for sure is we're all just human, and we're in for a very intriguing time. Next episode, we will get into the IG reports on McCabe and Comey and see what we can extract out of those. Until next time, guys, stay positive and stay intrigued, but also stay human. See ya.